let's dive into this. We're looking at the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, 15 years old, from Hendersonville, Tennessee. This was back in February 2024.
Right. And it's become one of those cases that just sticks with you because the core facts are so stark.
Exactly. Her goal here is really to pull apart the central mystery, that initial scene, and then trace how things fractured, how the official investigation kind of stalled while this whole private intelligence effort exploded.
And it starts right there at the scene. The sources describe it as almost sterile. Sebastian's medication, his phone, his money, all left behind.
No sign of a break-in, nothing disturbed. It's like he just vanished from inside the house.
Oof, yeah. And the time frame is incredibly narrow.
The mother, Katie Proudfoot, reported hearing a loud noise like a bang from his room around 10 p.m. She called out to him.
Yes, called out, and he apparently responded. Said he was okay.
But by 6 a.m. the next morning, he's gone. Just gone.
And the detail that makes that initial scene so haunting is the shoes.
Ah, yes, the shoes. Or lack thereof. Allegedly, all his shoes were still in the house.
Which is significant because the reporting, the sources we have, consistently say Sebastian really disliked being barefoot. Hated it, apparently.
So the picture is a teenager who hates bare feet, walking out into a cold February night with no shoes. It immediately flags something's off.
Right. It doesn't fit a typical runaway scenario, especially not in those conditions.
Yet, the initial official response, it felt like they were leaning towards him wandering off, maybe in distress. The scale was huge.
Oh, massive. You had, 2,000 searchers covering 44,000 acres, FBI, TBI, everyone was involved from the get-go.
And they used some specific tactics, didn't they? Like blasting his favorite song.
Yeah, Eye of the Tiger. That's classic FBI behavioral analysis playbook stuff.
What does that tell us? What were they thinking?
It suggests they were considering possibilities like maybe a severe mental health crisis, a dissociative state, even potential suicidal ideation. The idea is a familiar, powerful stimulus might cut through that fog, might draw him out if he was nearby and, lost or hiding.
So searching woods, waterways, landfills, standard procedure if you think someone might be disoriented or worse.
Exactly. Treating it like a missing person who might have wandered off and succumbed to the elements or gotten trapped somewhere.
But that approach hit a wall pretty fast after about a week.
A week of finding absolutely zero. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, no sightings on any cameras in a pretty wide area.
And that's when the official ground search was significantly scaled back. That felt like a major turning point.
It was. Because the lack of any evidence became the evidence itself. If he'd simply walked off statistically, they should have found something in that massive search area.
So the thinking shifts.
Completely. The scale back signals that investigators likely moved away from the wandered off theory and started focusing more heavily on scenarios involving, other parties, abduction, foul play, something more controlled.
And right around then, the family situation also started to fracture, at least publicly.
Yeah, Sebastian's biological father, Seth Rogers, he began publicly questioning the timeline, specifically why Sebastian wasn't physically checked on after that bang was heard.
That created tension, and then the mother and stepfather, Katie and Chris Proudfoot, they withdrew from the public eye, cited intense online harassment.
Which, happens in these high-profile cases.
Yeah.
But it created this vacuum. The official investigation went quieter, the immediate family went quieter.
And into that void steps, everyone else.
Precisely. The digital world lit up. You saw independent groups, citizen sleuths, and figures like Dwayne, Dog the Bounty Hunter Chapman getting involved, aligning with Seth Rogers.
And importantly, professional cyber intelligence firms started digging in. At night, creative intelligence is mentioned prominently in our sources.
Yes, they dedicated serious resources. We're not just talking about reading social media posts. They were doing deep digital forensics.
What does it actually mean in this context? What were they looking for?
They spent reportedly 13 months analyzing digital communications, metadata, location data, social connections, not necessarily Sebastian's directly, but the digital footprints of people around the situation, looking for anomalies, connections, movements that might relate back to the time he vanished. It's about finding the digital echo of a potential crime.
Which leads us right up to this very recent development. October 4th, 2025, this cyber work has apparently yielded actionable intelligence.
Correct. At night, working with another group, One World Rapid Response, announced they are launching physical boots-on-the-ground operations.
But not in Tennessee initially.
No. The initial focus is in Mississippi and Kentucky. This is key. It suggests the digital trails led them far away from the immediate disappearance site.
And the stated goal isn't just finding Sebastian anymore, is it?
This isn't a search for a lost kid. It's an evidence recovery operation based on long-term intelligence analysis.
So let's just crystallize this. The official case is still open, but seems somewhat static. Meanwhile, a private intel operation fueled by 13 months of cyber work is deploying teams across state lines.
And critically, still zero physical or video proof Sebastian ever actually walked out of that house. As one analyst put it, the basic story just doesn't add up.
It's this core contradiction, isn't it? The absolute lack of evidence where you'd expect some trace. In today's world, with cameras and data everywhere, achieving a perfectly sterile disappearance like this is improbable.
Highly improbable if it was unplanned or messy. It points towards something very controlled. Either he was removed before the search grid locked down, or, well, the exit wasn't through the front door in the way we imagine.
So the final thought for you to consider, what does that level of control, that complete absence of expected evidence, tell you? If the scene is perfectly clean, who was sophisticated enough to clean it, or to ensure there was nothing left behind in the first place? That's the question hanging over those new search zones in Mississippi and Kentucky. Yeah.
Like Dog the Bounty Hunter and at night creative intelligence.
Exactly. Especially at night. They bring a different skill set. Open source intelligence, digital forensics,
Right.
basically shifting the search from the woods to the web,
Looking for digital breadcrumbs instead of physical ones.
Right. And this is where we see a real potential conflict emerge, because these private groups started generating very specific, potentially time-sensitive leads.
Leads that they felt weren't being acted upon.
That's the core of their argument. First, there was the treehouse tip in April 2025. A photo surfaced of what looked like a makeshift shelter.
And forensic analysis suggested it was worth checking out.
Highly actionable, according to them. But then came something even more dramatic in June 2025.
The Cancun ransom demand.
Yes, a credible tip, apparently, involving a $30,000 ransom demand in cryptocurrency. The implication being Sebastian had been trafficked to Mexico.
Okay, that's incredibly specific and serious, not just a vague rumor.
Definitely not. It suggested a specific location, a potential life or death situation.
So how did the official investigation respond to that, according to the private teams?
Well, according to At Night and others involved, the response was essentially silence, or maybe a brief acknowledgement saying it was passed along.
Which, if true, is concerning. If you have a credible ransom demand.
The argument from the private side is that this lack of urgent action potentially jeopardized Sebastian's safety and could undermine responses to future threats. If traffickers think demands won't be taken seriously,
It creates a dangerous precedent. So this perceived lack of action, these critical investigative gaps, as they called them.
it led At Night and their partners to publicly call for the FBI to take over primary oversight of the case.
Has that happened?
That debate seems ongoing. But in the meantime, the private search hasn't stopped. They've just announced a new operation.
Right, the boots on the ground searches.
Yeah, planned for this October, targeting specific areas in Mississippi and Kentucky, looking for evidence.
So the commitment from these groups to find answers, to find Sebastian, it's clearly still there.
Absolutely. But this whole situation, this deep dive, it really exposes a difficult dynamic, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is about this conflict. When you have private intelligence, potentially credible, time-sensitive information in a case like this,
What happens then? What are the real-world consequences if the official investigation meets that intelligence with perceived silence or delay? That's the troubling question we're left wrestling with here. Our mission today, it's a tough one, but really important. We're analyzing the sources on the baffling disappearance of Sebastian Rogers. Remember, he vanished from a home that was reportedly locked. And we're focusing on the huge private intelligence effort, led by his dad, Seth Rogers, and groups like At Night.
exactly. You see this constant stream of, frankly, highly actionable intelligence from private sources just slamming into this wall, a wall of official silence, as the sources put it. And this friction, this lack of communication, it's really stalled the search for Sebastian.
Right. Okay, so let's maybe start by unpacking the public behavior of the parents, Katie and Chris Proudfoot. There was that one emotional TV interview, 8 days after he disappeared, and then almost immediately after that, they just kind of retreated, went silent, moved into an RV, started saying they were being harassed.
Yeah, and the analysis of that initial public appearance is pretty key here. Body language experts, they jumped on it pretty quickly, noted a real lack of visible emotion, apparently, and sort of evasive answers in that single interview. You combine that public withdrawal with some earlier reports about the stepfather's alleged past behavior towards Sebastian, well, it just created this vacuum, and public suspicion rushed right in to fill it.
And that brings us to one of the most, well, jaw-dropping details that came out later. The Bumble dating story. An anonymous source came forward claiming Chris Proudfoot was actually on a date in Nashville, just 2 months after Sebastian went missing, and she alleged Chris told her his son, Sebastian, had died maybe 9 or 10 months earlier in a car accident. Something about hitting black ice.
Yeah, it's genuinely hard to wrap your mind around that. Creating this entirely new fatal story for your stepson, who is, at that point, publicly listed as missing, just 2 months later. And while, understandably, a lot of public focus went onto the family's really strange behavior, the investigation seemed to stall, which meant private groups felt they had to step up.
And they really did step up. At night, for example. The sources say they've now put in over 500,000 analyst hours on this. 500,000 hours. And we're not just talking about people searching woods. This was digital forensics, deep network mapping, geospatial stuff. They were trying to build a full picture.
Precisely. A massive undertaking. Yet, the core issue seems to be this communication breakdown. Leads just weren't followed up on, reportedly. Let's look at two really critical examples mentioned in the sources. Ignored tips. First, you had the treehouse tip back in April 2025. Someone sent an anonymous photo, looked like a makeshift tent or hideout, had things like a water container, a blanket inside. It was flagged, escalated as potentially actionable intelligence, and then just silence.
Crickets. And then, arguably even more critical, was the ransom tip in June 2025. This one involved a apparently credible ransom demand, $30,000 in crypto. And the tip suggested Sebastian had been trafficked to Cancun, Mexico. This got sent up the chain immediately. FBI, TBI, NCMEC, all the right agencies.
But hang on, couldn't there be a reason for caution? I mean, a $30,000 crypto ransom tip? Maybe from an unknown source? Wouldn't the FBI be wary?
Oh, absolutely. Caution is warranted. You have to vet these things. But the response described was, well, it was more than cautious. It was dismissive. The official reply was basically just a short note. Consider your tip acknowledged. And that was it. No follow-up questions, no engagement described in the sources. And that failure to even engage, it wasted critical time, especially in digital cases like potential trafficking or crypto ransoms. That kind of evidence, wallet addresses, IP logs, chat records, it's incredibly volatile. It can disappear in hours, maybe days. Delay means lost data. So with all these ignored leads piling up, what happened next? The private groups, they went public, right? They formally called for federal intervention, asking the FBI to take over completely, or at the very least, to secure all the intelligence that these private groups had gathered for a proper review.
Exactly. But the search itself, it doesn't wait for bureaucratic decisions. The boots-on-the-ground operation was announced October 4th, 2025. They're deploying specialized teams now, actively searching specific sites in Mississippi and Kentucky, looking for what the sources call artifacts of a crime. So, physical evidence, maybe DNA traces, belongings, soil disturbance, things related to the worst-case scenarios, unfortunately. The focus now is finding concrete evidence of what happened to Sebastian, who's now 16, wears glasses, has brown hair.
Wow. So this deep dive, it really throws into sharp relief this huge gap, doesn't it, between the speed and methods of modern private intelligence gathering and the, well, sometimes seemingly slow and siloed processes of official investigations, especially in these really urgent missing persons cases.
It does. And it leaves you with a really important question to think about. When you consider something as serious as that alleged ransom demand and the consistent lack of official action on time-sensitive intelligence, what kind of risk does that institutional silence pose? Not just for this case, but for the willingness of people to provide high-stakes intelligence in real time in the future. It's definitely something to mull over. We want to focus on the intelligence, the really critical stuff that the private investigation uncovered.
Right, and importantly, how that intelligence was reportedly received or maybe not received by official channels.
Exactly. Our mission today is to get clarity on those specific leads that seemed actionable but apparently hit a kind of, well, a wall of silence.
Okay, so context first. The official search was massive, you remember, huge effort, but ultimately yielded. Well, nothing concrete.
Right. And that void was filled pretty quickly by a private coalition. Sebastian's father, Seth, was involved.
Along with Dog the Bounty Hunter and At Night Creative Intelligence, they really stepped up.
Now, for a long time, there was a lot of noise, mostly distraction, around that green hoodie person from the Texas Roadhouse video.
Oh, yeah, that dominated everything for months.
Well, law enforcement finally cleared that up, right?
Yeah.
December 2024, they found the person, confirmed no link, so we can set that aside.
Totally irrelevant now. So, let's talk signals, not noise. The private effort was intense. You mentioned the scale.
Yeah, over 500,000 analyst hours.
Yeah.
That's a massive undertaking.
It really is. They weren't just sifting through casual tips, they were digging deep, looking for actionable intelligence.
And this effort became international too, right? Summer of 2025.
It did. There was a surge in tips, unverified mostly, but consistently suggesting Sebastian might be in Mexico, so At Night issued an international alert. Proactive.
Okay, so let's get to the first really specific lead they developed. This treehouse tip from April 6th, 2025. What was that exactly? It sounds more than just a sighting.
It was. It started with an anonymous photo, looked like a makeshift tent or some kind of hideout, had domestic items inside.
Okay.
But the critical part, the really crucial thing, was that the private team managed to extract an email address connected to that photo.
An email address. Wow. So a digital footprint.
Exactly. A forensic lead. Something verifiable they could trace. They compiled it, sent it straight to the FBI and local authorities. Urgent follow-up recommended.
And the response to this? Specific digital lead.
Nothing. Complete silence. That's the first point where the private team felt a critical lead just wasn't being pursued. A real gap.
Okay, so that's worrying. But things escalated from there, didn't they? June 23rd, 2025, the ransom demand.
Yeah, this was huge. A credible tip came in involving a $30,000 ransom demand
$30,000.
in cryptocurrency, and it was tied to a specific digital wallet, traceable. The tip suggested Sebastian had been trafficked to Cancun, Mexico.
Cancun. Okay, so now you have not just a missing person, but potential trafficking, a specific location mentioned, and a financial demand with digital proof.
Precisely. This fundamentally changes the game. It's grounds for an immediate federal kidnapping investigation. Ransom demand, international element, digital wallet. It ticks all the boxes.
So immediate federal action required. What happened?
Well, again, silence. For days, no acknowledgement from federal authorities.
Seriously, after a ransom demand like that.
It took a licensed private investigator from the coalition personally reaching out to local authorities just to get any response.
And what was that response?
It was
Hmm.
grief. And pretty dismissive, honestly. Basically, consider your tip acknowledged. The tip is being investigated by the FBI. And then, more silence.
Just acknowledge for a potential kidnapping ransom.
That was it. Essentially brushed off despite the urgency and the evidence provided. It felt like a critical failure in escalation.
You can see why they'd be frustrated.
Yeah.
So what was the fallout from this pattern?
The coalition, At Night, and their partners felt they had no choice. They formally and publicly called for the FBI to take over primary oversight of the entire case.
Citing these investigative gaps.
Yeah.
The ignored leads.
Exactly. They argued that critical intelligence wasn't being acted upon, putting Sebastian at risk.
And they put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, with the reward fund.
Oh, absolutely. The FBI has offered up to $50,000, which is standard.
But the private coalition.
Dog the Bounty Hunter and One World put up $500,000. $500,000.
Wow. So combined, that's...
$550,000.
Yeah.
A massive sum. It shows just how strongly they believe in the intelligence they've gathered and how determined they are to get answers.
Just so listeners have the details for awareness. Sebastian Rogers would be 16 now, brown hair, brown or hazel eyes, wears glasses.
Right. So, wrapping this up, what we're seeing here is this stark tension. You've got this huge, well-funded, highly professional private effort.
Generating very specific, actionable leads. Forensic data like the email address, the ransom demand with a crypto wallet.
Leads that seem to demand immediate, serious investigation. But they're met with what appears to be systemic silence or, at best, dismissive acknowledgement from official agencies.
Leave you wondering, doesn't it, when private investigations uncover credible, urgent intelligence like this, especially in a potential kidnapping, what needs to change?
What kind of mechanism do we actually need to ensure that a child's safety, backed by solid leads, gets prioritized over, bureaucratic delays or jurisdictional issues?
That's the really critical question this deep dive brings to the surface, something important for all of us to think about.